Hi there, Marsha Egan here. Our Lunch and Learn this month is called Important, Urgent, and that's the conundrum that is a time management challenge for a lot of people. So I thought I would try to take a little bit of the mystery away, challenge you to think rather deeply about this subject, and give you tools to be able to use the important, unimportant, urgent, not urgent grid to help you achieve your goals even faster and more effectively. We provided you a handout. You don't really need it. It's not all that complicated. But in the beginning of the handout, there are two columns. The first column, I want to challenge you to take a moment. We're going to pause the tape. Take a moment and write down the 5 things that you spent your time doing most. Just think back on the last week. And if you want to get really dangerous about it, put some percentages. Now, you don't need to put sleep. We know everybody sleeps. But where are you spending your time? So take a minute and just write those down, and we'll be back. Now that you have filled out that column, the second column, I'd like you to take a moment and write down the 5 things that are your biggest priorities in your life. Could be family, could be career, could be health, could be. Anyway, stop the tape, take another minute or two, and write those down. Now that we have these 2 columns, I want to challenge you to look at those columns. And if you provided percentages, you could actually just think about what those percentages are. Take a look at those 2 columns and see whether they're in sync. See how well they match up. It can give you an idea or a window to some areas that you might want to be spending more time with or less time with based on the priorities you've chosen for your life. And then this lends itself to the discussion of what's important and what's not important, and what's urgent and what's not urgent. This is a very simple grid that you can use to help you decide how to spend your time. I'm going to be showing you that grid in just a minute, but this can go back to these 2 columns that you have compared, because sometimes we end up spending time on things that are not important to us and forsaking things that are. It was just a little exercise to get you warmed up, but I'd like to get into this whole grid in the next few minutes. This is known in many circles as the Eisenhower matrix. It is used by time management gurus all over the world. And as I said, we're just talking about urgent and important, and not urgent and not important. And when you put it in a grid, you can see right here what we're talking about. Just about everything on that to-do list, or that comes at you, is not on your to-do list, has 2 of these characteristics. And once you can kind of categorize them, you can figure out how to deal with them. So what I would like to do is talk about the easy one first. The easy one first is if it's important and urgent. In other words, you're working, your child runs in and has a cut, and all of a sudden that is both urgent and important. You've got to get her to the doctor right away. There are a number of things that are both urgent and important. And when we know that they are truly both urgent and important, there really isn't much choice. We've got to do them. Now, the challenge is to have as few of those happening to you or on your plate as possible. And this is where we have some strategies for you to help keep that from happening. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What about if it is not important and not urgent? This is quadrant 4 down here. And if it's not urgent and not important, there's not a lot of deciding to do about that either. So basically, the answer is don't do it if it is not urgent and not important. And oh, by the way, how many times do we get distracted into doing something like that? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying when we're intentional about how we choose to spend our time, it can be very useful. That evaluation I was asked to do on my last Amazon purchase, that's probably not urgent and it's probably not important either. I can let it go. This is the category in yellow here that we want to let go. One of the big distractors then is in red. I'm glad it's in red. And that is when it's urgent, but not important. How many times does that happen? And a lot of times that's put upon us by other people. I don't know if you've ever heard this expression, but I have heard it used one too many times, and that is, your lack of planning does not constitute a crisis on my part. Anyway, if it is urgent and not important, it can pull us away. And that is, I call that one the Achilles heel, because you can really get pulled right into fixing something for someone else when it is not important at all. Anything below the line here, we need to think about it very carefully as to how much time we're spending with it. Let's now talk about our biggest opportunity, and that is the important but not urgent. Things that are important but not urgent have a tendency to be superseded by the red square here, the urgent and not important, and perhaps even the yellow square here. Things that are important but not urgent help you build towards things that are much bigger and over time much more important. Let's take a few examples. Is it urgent and important that you exercise 3 times a week? No. Is it important and not urgent that you exercise 3 times a week? Well, if your health is important to you, yes, then that becomes an item in the blue square. How about getting your car inspected? I don't know about you, but in Massachusetts, where I live, we get inspections once a year. I know that my inspection is in October. And starting October 1, I have 31 days to get my car inspected. At that point, it is important but not urgent. If I don't get it inspected until October 31st, or maybe November 2nd or 3rd, all of a sudden it has moved into the urgent and important column. This is where you have to drop everything, and it detracts from your ability to get other things done that could be even more important. So what happens with a number of these important and not urgent items is that they can turn urgent if you ignore them. So the strategy for you to maximize your effectiveness and your impact is to, number one, decide what's important according to what's important to you. I can't tell you what's important to you, but once it's important, then what we want to do is get it on the schedule and make time for it. I remember when I was in the big insurance company, it's important for me to stay up on what the industry knowledge is and the periodicals and things like that. And I had a tendency to just move them away, move them off. And all of a sudden I would have 3 months of reading to do. And some of it was already old, or some of it I had missed and I should have known. That's a true confession there, but that's the kind of thing that happens with important but not urgent. It gets shoved aside. So the challenge is to identify what's important, what's above the line. And for the important and urgent, let's use this D, do it. For the important and not urgent, let's decide. In other words, let's schedule something. Let's get it into the mix and into the plan. Talking about that car inspection, let's just say on October 3rd, you're running a whole bunch of errands and you just check it off the list. It's done. You don't have to worry about it for another year. It's not going to become one of those things that overtakes your time when it's not convenient. Now, for quadrant 3, depending on what the item is, it could be that you can delegate it. If it's not important to you, it may be important to someone else. So delegating it or just delaying it might be the best way to handle it. And quadrant 4, the D is dump it. So delete. So there are 4 Ds here. We're either going to do, decide, delegate, or delete. Okay, we're back. I know you were staring at that screen a long time, but I hope it's imprinted indelibly into your psyche, because the place that the most successful people play is where? The blue screen. The important but not urgent. That's where you invest in yourself. I'd like to challenge you and your group to sit down and talk about this and share examples of what's on your to-do list and where you're categorizing them. Now, I am not sitting in judgment. If you have something unimportant and unurgent that you like to do, I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying that in the game of life, that may not be getting you to your goal. It may be a point of enjoyment. You might like filling time giving that Amazon evaluation. And hey, no judgment here. If you have a lot of urgent and important items that are kind of running you, the challenge is to get some of them handled so that you actually have space when you have a truly important and urgent item that you must deal with. The way to do that is to deal with the important and not urgent before it gets into the other quadrant. Thanks for listening. I hope this has been useful to you. And if you have any questions or comments, I am always all ears. This month, we've been spending a lot of time on time management issues, so there are resources all over this website for you, and I hope you take advantage of them. Until next time, I'm Marsha Egan, and thanks for being a member of our membership site.